everyone? Happy flippin' Tuesday and good evening. My name is Season Pixels, and you're watching The Breakdown here on Foxhole, D-Live, Rumble, X, and YouTube. Hopefully everyone out there is having a wonderful Tuesday. We are coming up on Christmas real fast here. Tomorrow we're going to do some Christmas music and just kind of hang out with chat, maybe look at some memes and just kind of have some fun. That'll be exclusively on Pilled tomorrow, so looking forward to that. Today, though, we just have a regular old episode of The Breakdown. Good pile of news to get into here. 29 tabs open in front of me, so not too shabby for 2 days before Christmas. Let's go ahead and get this thing started, guys. Over at thegatewaypundit.com, we have our first story of the night. Fulton County's admission that 315,000 votes were unlawfully cast exonerates President Trump once and for all. And yes, it absolutely freaking does when it comes to the election of 2020. So an underreported story from last week, and yeah, this should have been plastered all over the place. I did cover the story, but it should have been a lot more widespread. So underreported indeed was Fulton County's damning admission that a staggering 315,000 votes at least that were cast in the 2020 election were submitted unsigned, ergo unauthorized and hence in violation of the law. In an election that was decided by a measly 11,000 or so votes in the Peach State, that figure represents 28 times over what would have been needed to swing Georgia's 16 electoral votes from Biden's column to Trump. Again, one could make the case that 2020 was the most razor-thin election in history because Biden's alleged margin of victory in the three states that mattered most to winning that race, Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin, was 0.23%, 0.3%, and 0.63%, respectively. Between those three states, 42,918 votes, or a meager 13.6% of the total unauthorized votes from Fulton County, prevented Donald Trump from reclaiming the White House, unleashing the parade of horrors that marked the last 4 years of the Biden regime. Real quick, Carol Chick 63 and Andy Joanne, good to see both of you checking in out there as always. According to The Federalist, which reported on this stunning admission, David Cross, local election integrity activist, filed a challenge with the state election board in March 2022. Cross alleged that Fulton County violated Georgia election rules in the handling of advanced voting ahead of the November 2020 election, counting hundreds of thousands of votes even though polling workers failed to sign off on the vote tabulation tapes critical to the certification process, and Fulton County admitted to it. The same article goes on to say, Georgia election rules require that election officials have each ballot scanner print 3 closing tapes at the end of each voting day. Poll workers must sign these tapes or include a documented reason for refusal. Because the tapes were not legally certified, David Cross attested, Fulton County had no lawful authority to certify its advanced voting results to the Secretary of State, yet it did. What this represents is something millions of Americans, above all the president himself, have known for the last 5 years. A dramatic breach of public trust and dereliction of duty by Georgia state officials that has put the integrity of America's electoral system in doubt. The question of 2020, however, goes much deeper than simply a problem of election integrity, though it is that in spades. Similar to the autocratic reaction of Democrat lawmakers to COVID, the bipartisan response to 2020 by leading members of the Uniparty on both sides of the aisle drove a dagger through the heart of American justice and raised pivotal questions about whether we can still call ourselves a free society. If 2020 had simply remained a mere political dilemma, one that resulted in the terrible outcome it did, but without the attached lawfare, it would have been bad enough. The country still would have gone through the hellfire of the last 4 years, but at least if Democrats permitted Donald Trump and Republicans to hash out these problems in the public square with honest inquiries and working collaboratively to shore up the security of these systems, the end result would not have been as bad. Of course, that was not what happened, far from it. Instead, not only did Democrats and their fellow travelers and the Republican establishment prevent public discussion of the results of the 2020 race, completely pillorying a fundamental right under the First Amendment, but they went 100 steps further and began persecuting, with not only steep civil but criminal penalties, anyone who would so dare raise the question in public conversation. Therefore, the story of the last 4 years was not just one of electoral incompetence of the highest magnitude, but a complete stampeding of the First Amendment and due process of law. The president and his legal team got on the phone with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger et al. To inquire about exactly what had been uncovered and admitted to 5 years later by Fulton County. The president at the time wanted to ensure that electoral procedures were adequately followed. That is a perfectly reasonable inquiry in any election, but especially one in which the results were so close and many unprecedented changes were made. Rules were openly flouted, being one of the more shocking ones under the pretext of COVID, and in more radical corners, racial justice, the devastating results of critical race theory put into practice, and no doubt the BLM nonsense that happened the summer before. It was because of all those procedural changes of dubious constitutional legitimacy that Joe Biden, who was an invalid while in office, somehow garnered more popular votes despite being the least popular president since the advent of the Gallup poll in American history. Indeed, one could make a very strong case that it would have been a dereliction of Donald Trump's own duties as President of the United States had he not made the inquiry, a margin call, let's call it, into the electoral procedures of the most tightly contested states in 2020. The president has a constitutional prerogative expressly stated in the text of Article 2 to take care that the nation's laws be faithfully executed. This means at minimum that during an election, particularly one that takes place during a once-in-a-century global pandemic, that he should take precautionary measures to ensure that changed electoral procedures were done lawfully and in compliance with long-standing, historically supported legal protocol. But because Georgia at the time was feeling massive public pressure to kowtow to Democratic-supported interest groups, including big tech companies and deep state actors who wanted to expeditiously hand the proverbial baton over to Biden, at which point the 1,000-year woke Reich might commence for good, expurgating MAGA from history for all time. That indeed, without exaggeration, was the plan. Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger, and crew, in an ersatz and slipshod manner, wound up sweeping the systematic fraud under the rug. Democratic accountability be damned. Even today, Fulton County's Board of Elections legal representative, Ann Brumbaugh, despite admitting to the fraud, was uncanny in her nonchalant dismissiveness to it. As the Federalist again reported, Brumbaugh described the illegal certification as a violation of the rule. But further said, since 2020 again, we have new leadership and a new building and a new board and a new standard operating procedure, and since then the training has been enhanced, but we don't dispute the allegation from the 2020 election. Perhaps that unbelievable admission, which again was not for a mere dozen or so votes, but representative of nearly 6.5% of all the votes cast in Georgia in 2020, might be excusable maybe if the election reached some kind of peaceful resolution and nobody was arrested for simply asking questions about its outcome. But that, of course, is not what happened, and we all remember it. What happened was that anyone who would dare raise gentle inquiries about what happened, honest election workers like Tina Peters, demonstrators like those who objected peacefully at the Capitol on January 6th, even the President of the United States were slapped with the full fury of the law. And that fury came not only in the form of just civil penalties, which itself would have been an historically anomalous, radically disproportionate response to the so-called crime, but criminal prosecutions. In the state of Georgia alone, Trump and his 18 quote-unquote co-conspirators were charged, incredulously, under a racketeering statute, RICO, the same instrument used to combat organized crime, to have their reputation smeared as dangerous criminals simply for doing the bold and courageous thing of standing by the president by probing whether 2020 was or was not conducted fairly, as history would prove it certainly was not. Your correspondent is afraid many conservatives, even today, too cavalierly ignore the ramifications of what it means to have the First Amendment's protections, foremost of all being the rights to speak one's mind freely and assemble peacefully to contest government decisions made into mincemeat by the government. They do not grapple with the earth-shattering ramifications of that occurring. Adding further mockery to the whole sham, the closest thing to a puppet president reminiscent of the old Soviet leaders so regularly observed in the twilight hours of that communist regime, installed over administrative operations. Joe Biden, the face of the manufactured apparatus that illicitly ousted Trump from power, for they could not stand what he represented, is the most egregious affront to justice this country has ever seen. He also stands as an affront to democracy in its original and true meaning. As history has vindicated, of which this Fulton County revelation is but the latest and far from final iteration, Biden was the face of an illegitimate political regime that forced itself back into power by any means necessary, up to and including especially cheating, because it could not stand Donald Trump, it could not stand a genuine Democratic counter-response response, nor could it stand the Constitution and the God-given natural rights enshrined therein. So it had to trample over all three, kickstarting a terrible precedent that, if allowed to percolate without a decisive correction to the historical record, with Biden officially designated as illegitimate, much as the Vatican used to do with a cadre of anti-popes, may well threaten to sink our republic for good. Nothing short of a complete and total invalidation of Biden's fake presidency and a restoration of the first term and election that Donald Trump was denied will suffice. For that is a big lie which can prove fatal to these United States, notwithstanding a powerful prophylactic that corrects the historical record once and for all. So there is that, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. Very eloquently written piece here, and I could not agree with it more. I do hope to hear more about what happened in Fulton County in the rest of Georgia in the 2020 election. Not only Georgia, by the way, but pretty much all the swing states had major freaking problems in the 2020 election. Not to mention many other states, I'm guessing, that weren't even swing states. So there it is. Once again, guys, from the Gateway Pundit. President Trump has recently been saying that there is going to be a whole lot more coming out on the topic of the 2020 election, so I look forward to that information hitting the articles. Real quick, Sulfanol out there with a ship. Very generous of you, Sulfanol. Says, Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you very much, Sulfanol, for the ship. And Merry Christmas right back at you, my friend. I really appreciate that. And hopefully your Tuesday's going superb. Here we go from thegatewaypundit.com. Next story. Jeffrey Epstein's disturbing pedophile island temple revealed in images released by the Department of Justice. So we do have more Epstein files coming out today. And no, it's not a gym. With the hundreds of thousands of documents released by the Department of Justice, we can expect that for a long time, new revelations will keep popping up as people all over the world are scouring the archives. Now we've come to the point where one of the most disturbing aspects of the story is beginning to gain attention: the Island Temple. For a long time, mainstream media insisted in calling this creepy building on the highest point of Little St. James Island the Gym, when there's obviously a religious or cultish aspect to the cube. While the images from the DOJ release mostly show the temple in a semi-dismantled state, when seen in all of its demonic glory, with the golden dome and the gilded bird statues, there is no doubt that there's something very dark at work there. The New York Post reported, sicko financier Jeffrey Epstein's twisted pedophile island included an unnerving temple-like building featuring an elaborate ceiling mural depicting signs of the zodiac and a pair of ratty mattresses. The cube-like building, adorned in Grecian-style blue and white stripes, was erected at the highest point of his sprawling private enclave in the U.S. Virgin Islands, flanked by palm trees and positioned overlooking the sea on a two-tier stone terrace decorated with bold pink geometric shapes. The interior of the mysterious structure, the purpose of which was not immediately clear, appeared to be in a state of disrepair despite its grandiose decor, with exposed cement board panels as well as bits of wood strewn throughout. A few observations on this report by the New York Post. The temple is not in disrepair, but is being dismantled after the Epstein trafficking ring was busted. And two, the building style is not related to Greece. It's been a long time since internet sleuths have found the temple to copy the style of bathhouses in Aleppo, Syria. And they say see below, and I do remember that. And finally, the purpose of the temple is clear, disturbing as it may be. The question of what kind of religion or cult was practiced there, with Islamic stripe patterns, golden domes, bird statues, and constellations on the ceiling, that's disturbing to think about, so people prefer to call it a gym. The entire ceiling was painted to resemble a cloudy sky, which served as the backdrop for an elaborate and perplexing collage featuring a patchwork motif of animals, constellations, mythical creatures, and seafaring imagery. A massive, ornately carved wooden bookshelf stretching nearly floor to ceiling stood empty on one side, directly across from a plywood-covered portal, which appeared to be a large, unfinished door or window. So there is that, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. More coming out regarding Epstein, more images coming out, more documents coming out, and we have a couple stories on that today. Two more on the whole Epstein release stuff today. One from Zero Hedge, the next from Daily Caller. So here's the Zero Hedge one. DOJ releases more Epstein files after blowing the deadline and says some documents contain false claims. So after missing a Friday deadline to release all of the Epstein files, nuking several files containing images of President Donald Trump before restoring them, and heavily redacting most of what came out, which can apparently be unredacted to reveal salacious claims against Trump, the DOJ on Tuesday morning released nearly 30,000 additional pages, according to a statement posted on X, which also warned that some of the claims made in the documents against Trump are untrue and sensationalist. Some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election, reads the Post. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already, which is absolutely true. This is why I don't believe any of this nonsense about Donald Trump in the files. If there was anything legit on Donald Trump having to do with Epstein, then they probably wouldn't have even needed to use like the fake Russia hoax, right? Like, they would have just been able to hit President Trump with the Epstein stuff, selectively leak it, and literally stop his political career in its tracks before it even started. They didn't do that, which tells me that there's no credibility when it comes to those allegations. If there was, then that would be a complete and utter betrayal of common sense. Nevertheless, out of our commitment to the law and transparency, the DOJ is releasing these documents with the legally required protections for Epstein's victims. For example, here's this one. He raped me. Donald J. Trump had raped her along with Jeffrey Epstein. She was found with her head blown off. There was no way it was suicide. This person says, now we're starting to see why Trump was hiding the Epstein files, and it probably gets much worse. Well, honestly, Donald Trump was not hiding the Epstein files, but okay. The releases were mandated by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which President Trump signed, which was passed in Congress and signed into law by Trump. It requires the DOJ to produce all records related to Epstein, accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, and any other possible co-conspirators by December 19th. Over the weekend, Deputy AG Todd Blanche said that the DOJ is working to make redactions to files to protect possible Epstein victims, telling NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday the reason why we are still reviewing documents and still continuing our process is simply to protect victims, adding that the DOJ is going through a very methodical process with hundreds of lawyers looking at every single document and making sure that victims' names and any of the information from victims is protected and redacted, which is exactly what the Epstein Files Transparency Act expects. Except apparently it's amateur hour at the DOJ, and they're referring to the fact that basically these redactions are just, they're like blacking out the background, and you can still highlight and select the text and just paste it somewhere else and read it. So it would seem that the redactions are actually not redactions at all. They're just redactions in name only, which is kind of funny. In a Saturday evening statement, the DOJ wrote that it had re-released 119 pages of materials that had been entirely redacted. Documents and photos will continue to be reviewed consistent with the law and with an abundance of caution for victims and their families, the department posted to X. Maxwell is serving a 20-year federal prison sentence stemming from her 2021 conviction for sex trafficking crimes, while Epstein was found dead in a New York City jail cell in August 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. So there is that, guys, once again from ZeroHedge.com. And, of course, I'll keep you guys updated on the Epstein release as we move forward. And then next one here from Daily Caller. DOJ claims that alleged Epstein letter to Larry Nassar is fake. So the U.S. Department of Justice concluded a letter in which the late Jeffrey Epstein seemingly claimed he and former Team USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar shared a love of young girls as fake. The letter was released Tuesday by the DOJ as part of ongoing disclosures related to allegations of sexual abuse involving Epstein. After noting it was reviewing the letter's validity, the DOJ released a statement on X indicating it was fake. The FBI has confirmed this alleged letter from Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar is fake. The fake letter was received by the jail and flagged for the FBI at the time, the DOJ said. According to the same statement, the Federal Bureau of Investigation determined the letter was fake because the writing did not match Epstein's. The letter was also postmarked 3 days after Epstein's death out of Northern Virginia while he was jailed in New York, and the return address did not list the jail where Epstein was being held or his inmate number, which is required for outgoing mail. This fake letter serves as a reminder that just because a document is released by the Department of Justice does not make the allegations or claims within the document factual. Nevertheless, the DOJ will continue to release all material required by law, the DOJ added. And I'm sure that there is a lot of people out there that are just going to not believe what the DOJ has to say here and say that it's not a fake, right? The letter, postmarked August 13th, 2019, was initially disclosed in a 2023 document dump before being released by the DOJ, according to the New York Post. In the letter, Epstein allegedly said he and Nassar both cared for young ladies in the hope that they'd reach their full potential. Epstein also appears to have revealed his plans to commit suicide in the same letter. As you know by now, I have taken the short route home. Good luck, the letter read. While addressing he and Nassar's alleged penchant for young girls, Epstein purportedly made reference to President Donald Trump, claiming Trump allegedly shares our love of young, nubile girls. When a young beauty walked by, he loved to grab snatch, whereas we ended up snatching grub in the mess halls of the system. Life is unfair, Epstein allegedly claimed in the same letter before signing his name. But of course, it wasn't Epstein actually writing this, it was obviously somebody else. Before confirming the letter was fake, the DOJ responded to what it called untrue and sensationalist claims involving Trump in a statement published on X. Some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already, the statement read in part. In a subsequent X post, the DOJ said it was currently looking into the validity of this alleged letter, highlighting the fact that the postmark showed Virginia, Epstein's inmate number was not included, and the envelope was postmarked 3 days after his death. The DOJ released thousands of documents and hundreds of photos on December 19th as required by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which Trump signed on November 19th. Photos of former President Bill Clinton in a hot tub and socializing with Epstein were included in the document and photo drop. A White House press office spokesperson directed the Daily Caller to the two statements published on X by the DOJ when asked to comment on the letter's allegations about Trump. So there it is, once again, guys, from dailycaller.com. And of course, when it comes to the Epstein files, you guys will be hearing anything interesting or worthwhile about these releases whenever they come out right here on the show. So there it is, my friends. Moving on to another story here from the Gateway Pundit. Seth Rich attorney Ty Clevenger blasts the FBI for 9-year cover-up and accuses the Bureau of lying to courts and burying evidence while ignoring court orders. A lawyer closely tied to the long-running legal battle over the mysterious death of Seth Rich is accusing the federal government of an extraordinary years-long cover-up, one he says mirrors the FBI's handling of other politically explosive cases and exposes systemic corruption at the highest levels of federal law enforcement. Ty Clevenger, an attorney who has spent years litigating FOIA cases related to Seth Rich, issued a blistering public statement this week alleging that the FBI deliberately concealed records, lied to federal courts, and is now openly defying a court order to produce documents related to Rich's case. Which, if this is happening at Trump's FBI, then this obviously is very concerning indeed. Clevenger's remarks come amid renewed scrutiny of the FBI following revelations that the Bureau effectively buried the January 6 pipe bomber investigation for years. Mr. Tizo and Facts Not Fear, good to see you guys out there. According to Clevenger, the FBI has been caught repeatedly lying to federal courts during 8 years of FOIA litigation, hiding and misrepresenting records related to Seth Rich on a massive scale. Even more alarming, Clevenger claims the FBI is currently defying a court order to turn over records, prompting a pending motion to hold the Bureau in contempt of court. Clevenger also blasted Republican lawmakers for their silence over the past 9 years, naming names. He pointed out that Representative Thomas Massie has aggressively pursued the Epstein files, but never publicly pressed on Seth Rich. Representative Barry Loudermilk has led investigations into January 6th, but according to Clevenger, has ignored the Rich case entirely. He then rattled off a list of prominent Republicans, Andy Biggs, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Chuck Grassley, Tim Burchett, and James Comer, asking whether any of them are even aware of what he calls an ongoing FBI cover-up. Here's his statement below. It says, in regards to Seth Rich, we now know that the FBI buried the J6 pipe bomber case for 5 years. Is it really so hard to believe that the FBI would bury the Seth Rich case for 9 years? And given recent revelations about massive fraud in the 2020 election in Georgia, media collusion, bad faith lawsuits, and bogus prosecutions of anyone who dared to ask questions, is it really so hard to believe that the same tactics were used to silence those who questioned the Seth Rich narrative? In 8 years of FOIA litigation, we've repeatedly caught the FBI lying to the court and hiding records about Seth Rich on a massive scale. FBI Director Kash Patel's FBI is currently defying a court order to produce records. We have a pending motion to hold the FBI in contempt of court. I've made sure that Patel is personally aware of the issue, but he says he does not want to get involved in the Seth Rich matter. Why not? I'd argue that Seth's case is far more significant then the pipe bomber, because it will likely show that the FBI has known since September 2016 that Seth, and not Russian hackers, was the source of the DNC emails published by WikiLeaks. I suspect grand conspiracy indictments will be coming out of the Southern District of Florida in January or February. Former Obama CIA Director John Brennan acknowledged today that he's the target of a Florida grand jury, so maybe Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi want to keep these Seth Rich documents under wraps until the indictments are made public. And yes, maybe so. Is the government on the verge of acknowledging that Seth was the source rather than the Russians? I'm really trying to give them the benefit of the doubt here. Meanwhile, where have GOP representatives and senators been for the last 9 years? Representative Thomas Massie has been all over the Epstein files, but never asked any questions about Seth. Representative Barry Loudermilk has been all over January 6th, but never asked any questions about Seth. Our Representatives Andy Biggs, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Senator Chuck Grassley, Representative Tim Burchett, Representative James Comer et al. Even aware of the ongoing FBI cover-up, he asks. So there is that, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. And I guess all I can really say is that I very much hope that Kash Patel's FBI is holding on to these documents and trying to keep them under lock and key until such time as an indictment that is connected to them actually comes out. That would probably be the best case scenario, because it would mean that they're withholding this information for benevolent purposes to make sure that they don't flub a prosecution rather than for a bad purpose, which would literally just be to block transparency and keep the deep state secrets secret. So there is that, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. And of course, I'll keep you guys updated on this very interesting story. Next one here from the Gateway Pundit as well. John Brennan is the target of Florida grand jury Russiagate probe. So, former CIA Director John Brennan is the target of a grand jury Russiagate probe in South Florida, according to his lawyers. In July, it was reported that former FBI Director James Comey and John Brennan were under FBI investigation over their involvement in Russiagate. CIA Director John Ratcliffe referred Brennan and Comey for prosecution over the summer. U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida Jason Redding Quinones is in charge of the investigation. Last month, Fox News reported that a federal grand jury subpoenaed John Brennan, former FBI lawyer Lisa Page, and former FBI counterintelligence special agent Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok was fired from the FBI in 2018 for violating bureau policies after he launched the Crossfire Hurricane Trump-Russia probe in July 2016. Strzok and his paramour, Lisa Page, discussed an insurance policy to keep Trump out of office. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk, Strzok text messaged to Page in an August 15, 2016 exchange referring to Andrew McCabe. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40, Strzok added. Other profanity-laced text messages between Strzok and Page showed their contempt for Donald Trump. Lisa Page was also fired. Brennan's lawyer confirmed that their client is the target of the grand jury probe. Just the News reported former CIA Director John Brennan's lawyers have taken the extraordinary step of confirming their client is a target of a criminal grand jury investigation in Florida and are asking the chief federal judge in Miami to stop the proceedings on the grounds that the Justice Department is judge shopping. The revelations came in a letter that defense lawyers Ken Weinstein and Natasha Harnwell Davis sent Monday to U.S. District Judge Cecilia M. Altanaga, a George W. Bush appointee to the bench who supervises the Miami Federal Court District. Weinstein and Davis revealed they have been informed by U.S. Attorney Jason Redding Quinones in Miami that the grand jury is investigating Brennan's role in the 2016-2017 Russia collusion probe that has since been discredited, including a CIA assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin tried to help Trump win the 2016 election. Brennan was also separately referred for prosecution by House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan. Chairman Jordan referred Brennan to the DOJ for knowingly making false statements during a May 2023 interview with the House Judiciary Committee. So there it is, once again, guys, from thegatewaypundit.com. Sounds to me like John Brennan may have an indictment coming his way, and also Comey may end up with another charge over this as well. Extremely excited to see any updates on this, as I was ranting about this yesterday. Like, I'm sick and tired of hearing how bad it was, like how criminal it was, how much the lawfare was unfair. I'm sick and tired about hearing about all of it, because honestly, we've learned enough about the criminality. We now need results. We need to see these people in prison. So anytime I see a story suggesting that we are headed in that direction, it makes me just a little bit comfier. Tweak, good to see you out there. Subpeg Vet, good to see you out there as well. What's going on, guys? How's everyone out there doing? Let me know in the live chat. Let's go ahead and continue on. Authorities charge New Jersey police chief with assault and kidnapping at a hotel. Kind of a crazy story here. A New Jersey police chief faces kidnapping and domestic assault charges after prosecutors alleged he attacked a woman during a September trip to Boston, Massachusetts. Carmen Veneziano, 47, pleaded not guilty on Monday in Suffolk Superior Court to 1 count of kidnapping and 3 counts of domestic assault and battery, the Boston Herald reported. Bail was set at $25,000, and Veneziano was ordered to wear a GPS monitor and stay away from the woman he allegedly attacked, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office told the Daily Caller. Veneziano has been serving as police chief in Totowa, New Jersey. He has held the position since 2020, according to CBS News. Assistant District Attorney Ian Pallenbaum said Veneziano and the victim traveled to Boston to attend a Red Sox game, then returned to their hotel and got into an argument. Veneziano allegedly left the room but came back around 3 a.m., demanding to be allowed back inside, the Boston Herald reported. Hotel security responded, and the woman let him back inside, after which the assault started, authorities alleged. He became not just verbally insulting again, but physically abusive by headbutting her, by dragging her by her legs, by holding her down on the bed, preventing her from leaving the room or even leaving the bed, Pallenbaum alleged. The woman called the front desk, and staff allegedly contacted police after hearing her say, "You hurt me." She did not disclose physical abuse to responding officers, but contacted Boston police days later to report what happened, authorities said. Veneziano's lawyer, Paolo Corso, called his client a role model and a community leader. Mr. Veneziano maintains his innocence, and he looks forward to addressing these allegations in court, the attorney said, according to CBS News. Totowa Mayor John Coiro suspended Veneziano without pay following his arrest, according to a Facebook post. Court records showed Veneziano faced DUI and reckless driving charges in New Jersey earlier this year, CBS News reported. His trial is expected in October. Coiro told the Daily Caller that the town is set to appoint an acting police chief December 26th. He also said the town's council previously suspended Veneziano for the DUI case following a required administrative delay. So there it is, guys, once again from dailycaller.com. And of course, I will keep you guys updated on this story. I'll let you guys know if he is found guilty or not guilty by the court. So there is that. Next one here, Representative Randy Fine is planning a resolution to expel Ilhan Omar, and that's what I'm talking about, slams Tim Walz over welfare fraud, saying that he should be in jail. And he absolutely should be in jail for looking the other way, allowing that stuff to happen. So Ilhan Omar should be expelled from the United States, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz should be in jail, according to Florida Representative Randy Fine, who confirmed he is preparing a House resolution targeting the Somalia-born Congresswoman amid ongoing investigations and allegations surrounding billions of dollars in welfare and pandemic-era fraud in Minnesota. On Sunday, Representative Randy Fine appeared on Newsmax, where he voiced support for President Donald Trump's recent remarks about Democrat squad member Representative Ilhan Omar, and outlined his plans to pursue formal action against her in the U.S. House of Representatives. During a rally in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Donald Trump sharply criticized Omar, accusing her of fabricating stories and committing immigration fraud. Ilhan Omar should be sent out of our country, Trump said. She married her brother either to stay or to get him into the country. She's a con person. She's full of con. Responding to the remarks, Fine said he fully agreed with the president. I agree with the president 100%, he said, describing Omar as a walking example of everything that is wrong with our legal immigration policy. Fine said he believes Omar should not only be removed from Congress, but expelled from the United States entirely. We imported tens of thousands of people who hate America, add no value to it, rob and steal from us, and we're supposed to be okay with it, the Florida Republican asked. I don't think Ilhan Omar should be expelled from Congress. I think she should be expelled from the United States. Fine said his decision to move forward with the resolution was prompted by a fundraising email from Omar calling for his expulsion. If I'm going to try to expel her, it won't be in a fundraising email, he said. She'll deal with it on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. The conversation focused on widespread allegations of fraud in Minnesota involving billions of dollars in pandemic-related welfare programs. According to Fine, the scope of the alleged misconduct, estimated at some $9 billion, is so widespread and so endemic that it directly implicates Democrat leadership at the state level, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. This wasn't an unfortunate consequence. This was their plan, Fine said. Their plan is to buy these people off by giving them taxpayer money to destroy the country by bringing in people who hate us. Citing welfare participation figures, the congressman added that 80% of Somali refugees are on welfare, concluding that Walz should not only not be reelected, he should be in jail. Fine warned that similar fraud may be rampant in other blue states, pointing to California and New York. In response to a clip of Walz promising to fix the programs, Fine was blunt. "That's a bunch of garbage," Fine said. "He's been governor for almost 8 years. This happened under his watch." Fine further accused Democrats of deliberately growing immigrant populations to rig elections. Ilhan Omar is only in Congress because of these fraudulent Somali refugees, he stated. Tim Walz is only governor because of these fraudulent Somali refugees. Fine concluded by saying, "We need to round them up, send them all home, and stop having the American people ripped off," while reaffirming his commitment to pursuing legislative action in Congress. Reaction online to Fine's remarks was swift and supportive. "Great," wrote Eric Doherty of Florida's Voice. "Send her packing." Ilhan Omar should be deported, wrote conservative commentator Gunther Eagleman. Representative Randy Fine just announced he's working on something every American has been wanting to hear, deporting Ilhan Omar, wrote media figure Benny Johnson. Earlier this month, White House border czar Tom Homan said the Trump administration is examining Omar's immigration history. The Trump-backed Fine has built a national profile around hardline immigration enforcement, a posture he has sharpened in recent months following violent attacks against National Guardsmen and renewed border concerns. In the aftermath of the tragic ambush last month of 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C., resulting in the death of Guardswoman Sarah Beckstrom, Fine called for a full stop on illegal immigration until our security and prosperity is guaranteed. This terrorist attack was led by an illegal immigrant Muslim terrorist who came in under the Biden administration in 2021, Fine said after the shooting. "We should be angry at the fact that Democrats let these monsters into our country." In October, Fine also discussed denaturalizing and deporting then New York State Assembly member Zohran Mamdani while introducing the Disqualifying Dual Loyalty Act of 2025, legislation to prohibit individuals holding foreign citizenship from serving in Congress. Fine has said the bill reflects his belief that elected officials must be America first in both law and loyalty. Omar, a member of the Progressive Squad in Congress, has faced repeated accusations of being anti-American and anti-Semitic, including past remarks accusing Israel of being an apartheid regime that has hypnotized the world, suggesting pro-Israel politicians are all about the Benjamins. She has also drawn widespread criticism for referring to the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks as the day when some people did something. In February 2023, then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reiterated why Omar was unfit to serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, saying she repeatedly used anti-Semitic tropes. She described 9/11 by saying some people did something, and she compared America to Israel, and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban. Representative Guy Reschenthaler later blasted the Congresswoman after she equated the United States and Israel with Hamas terrorists and the Taliban. Omar is an anti-Semite who hates America and hates American troops, he said. She has no place serving in Congress. By contrast, then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi defended Omar in 2019, telling reporters that while Omar had made multiple anti-Jewish remarks, she had not been intentionally anti-Semitic. In 2023, the Zionist Organization of America accused Omar of hating America as much as Israel. More recently, Omar claimed Immigration and Customs Enforcement operations amounted to state-sanctioned violence. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons rejected viral allegations made by Omar that ICE agents pulled over her son following a stop at Target, stating there is no record the incident ever happened. Earlier this month, during an appearance on Breitbart News Daily, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer described Omar as one of the most duplicitous con artists he has encountered in public office. Senator Ted Cruz also weighed in, saying that if allegations about Omar's marriage history were proven true, she would have violated multiple state and federal laws. President Trump has repeatedly criticized Omar on the campaign trail. Earlier this month in Pennsylvania, Trump accused the Congresswoman of always complaining, alleging she married her brother and is in the United States illegally. So there is that, guys. Once again, from Breitbart.com, we do have a clip from Newsmax on this. We'll go ahead and check that out. Here is Representative Randy Fine talking about Ilhan Omar and what he is doing to try and expel her from the United States. Sounds like the right frickin' move to me. Here we go.
Joining me now is Congressman Randy Fine, who is now actively considering a resolution to expel Ilhan Omar from Congress. Congressman, I want you to take a listen to what President Trump said about her at his rally in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
$9 billion. And they think that's just the beginning. They stole. Think of it. In their country, they live on nothing. They have nothing. They come here and they steal $9 billion. Are we stupid? I mean, how do we allow that to happen? Ilhan Omar should be sent out of our country. She should not be allowed to be a congresswoman. She married her brother either to stay or to get him into the country. And yesterday she, I guess, made up a story. She said the police attacked her son. They stopped the car and the police said, we never attacked him. We never stopped. It was a made-up story. She's a con person. She's full of con.
Congressman, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with the president 100%. Ilhan Omar is a walking example of everything that is wrong with our legal immigration policy. We imported tens of thousands of people who hate America, add no value to it, rob and steal from us. And we're supposed to be okay with it. I don't think Ilhan Omar should be expelled from Congress. I think she should be expelled from the United States. And that's something that I'm working on. But what prompted me to take this position is she decided to send around fundraising emails saying I should be expelled from Congress. Well, if that's her view, she should go for it. And so what I've said is if I'm going to try to expel her, it won't be in a fundraising email. She'll deal with it on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives.
You know, Governor Tim Walz, he's at the center of this, too. He says there's no evidence of $9 billion in fraud, but the U.S. attorney said providers in 14 high-risk programs are currently being audited by the state have billed $18 billion since 2018, and at least half or more is fraudulent. This is so widespread. This is so endemic. And we're talking autistic kids that maybe weren't getting the money they needed, welfare recipients. And you got Walz, he's running for a third term. So what do you think about Walz, the goal of him to run for a third term now?
Well, look, this wasn't an unfortunate consequence. This was their plan. Their plan is to buy these people off by giving them taxpayer money to destroy the country by bringing in people who hate us. These Somalis have been here for decades, yet 80% of them are on welfare. It's simply wrong. And Walz should go. He should not only not be reelected, he should be in jail. But worse than that, I think if you look at blue states across the country, whether it's New York, California, or others, I suspect we will see this everywhere. Democrats believe that illegal immigrants and legal immigrants should have the right to whatever they want, whenever they want it, and it should all be paid for by Americans. That's why I've filed a bill to end all welfare to all non-citizens, both legal and illegal.
I want everybody real quick to take a listen to what Walz says, that he's planning on he's vowing to fix it, yet he's been looking the other way this entire time. Listen to this.
Unlike the president, I'm the governor now. Whether these programs happened before we got here or afterwards, it doesn't matter. We're here now. We're the ones fixing it. You have my guarantee on this is that I certainly will have this thing fixed, and you see that we're on the front end of it. That's how this works.
Do you think he's on the front end of this?
That's a bunch of garbage. I mean, he's been governor for almost 8 years. This happened under his watch. They knew exactly what was going on, because if you look at the growth in these programs, in these populations, anyone with a brain should have been able to see something was going on, but they don't care. Yeah. They have fetishized illegal immigrants and legal immigrants from third world countries who they think will help them get elected. Ilhan Omar is only in Congress because of these fraudulent Somali refugees. Tim Walz is only governor because of these fraudulent Somali refugees. So we need to round them up, send them all home, and stop having the American people ripped off. And I'm determined to make that happen in Congress.
All right, so there it is. Some fire from Representative Randy Fine. Good stuff there from Breitbart. Let's go ahead and continue on into the next one here, which comes out of thegatewaypundit.com. Activist Judge Boasberg orders Trump administration to allow deported Venezuelans from El Salvador to return to the United States. Yes, probably the most ridiculous and outrageous ruling from a so-called judge that we have seen thus far. It is absolutely freaking shocking. Obama-era activist judge James Boasberg has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Venezuelan nationals who were lawfully removed from the United States and transferred to El Salvador. The ruling issued late Monday in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia stems from litigation brought by far-left immigration activists challenging the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to remove suspected members of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Back in April, the U.S. Supreme Court vacated Judge Boasberg's orders, barring the Trump administration's removals of Venezuelan gang members under the Alien Enemies Act. This comes after Judge Boasberg granted a temporary restraining order to stop the Trump administration from deporting thousands of Venezuelan nationals believed to be members of the Tren de Aragua gang under the Alien Enemies Act. The High Court said Boasberg lacked jurisdiction. The Supreme Court, however, said the administration must give a reasonable notice for gang members to challenge their deportations in court. In June, Judge Boasberg then ruled that the Trump DOJ must give illegal alien Venezuelan gang members sent to El Salvador CCOT prison a chance to challenge their deportations. Boasberg ruled that nearly every single one of the 140 Venezuelan gang members sent to CCOT was deported illegally. The judge said that the Trump administration must give the deported gang members a chance to seek habeas relief in court. Significant evidence has come to light indicating that many of those entombed in CCOT have no connection to the gang and thus languish in a foreign prison on flimsy, even frivolous accusations, the judge wrote. In a sweeping 43-page opinion released late Monday night, Judge Boasberg declared that the United States allegedly maintained constructive custody over the Venezuelans even after they were transferred to El Salvador, thereby giving his court jurisdiction to intervene and order their return. Quote, in many constructive custody cases, it is hard for a court to discern whether petitioners will be released upon a respondent's request. Not so here. Petitioners have indeed been released upon the United States' request. Since this court's June 4th opinion, multiple developments have shown that the United States is able to request and has successfully requested the release of CCOT detainees. First, after the government was ordered to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia from CCOT, he was brought back to the United States on June 6th. This return followed public statements made by the President of the United States agreeing that he could call up the President of El Salvador to secure the return of detainees like Abrego Garcia. Second, plaintiffs in this case were indeed released upon the United States' request in what appears to be a clear prisoner exchange between our country and Venezuela. In July, all 252 Venezuelans removed from the United States and detained in CCOT were sent to Venezuela. At the same time, 10 U.S. nationals were released from Venezuela and sent back to the United States. The court thus concludes that the government retained and exercised the power to control the return of CCOT detainees. According to the ruling, the court claims the Trump administration violated due process rights by deporting suspected members of the Venezuelan criminal gang Tren de Aragua without providing individualized hearings beforehand. As a remedy, Boasberg ordered the government to facilitate their return to the United States so they can pursue habeas corpus claims in U.S. courts. The ruling grants the Trump administration until January 5th, 2026 to facilitate the return of more than 100 Venezuelan men. I'm guessing the Trump administration will be appealing this freaking complete, absolute nonsense, and hopefully they win that appeal. But Judge Boasberg has gone far, far, far beyond the pale here, even worse than his previous rulings that were already outrageous as it is. So there it is, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. Absolutely nuts. Next one here from Just the News. The Supreme Court rejects Trump administration's request to deploy the National Guard troops in Chicago, but this is for now. Apparently they will be revisiting this in some way. So here we go. The Supreme Court on Tuesday rejected the Trump administration's emergency request to allow National Guard troops to be deployed in Chicago, marking a setback for the administration's attempts to curtail high crime rates in major cities. President Donald Trump has sought to deploy the National Guard in Chicago in the face of aggressive pushback from the citizenry and local government over immigration and customs enforcement operations in the Windy City. The court rejected the administration's interpretation of federal law regarding what constitutes regular forces. The law allows the president to federalize the National Guard when he can no longer execute the laws of the United States with regular forces, which the Trump administration characterized as federal agents such as ICE agents. However, the court ruled that regular forces likely meant the United States military. At this preliminary stage, the government has failed to identify a source of authority that would allow the military to execute the laws in Illinois, the court said in its unsigned order. 3 of the Supreme Court's conservative justices dissented from the majority: Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch. The ruling is a rare defeat for the administration given the court's 6-3 conservative majority. The court fails to explain why the president's inherent constitutional authority to protect federal officers and property is not sufficient to justify the use of National Guard members in the relevant area for precisely that purpose, Alito wrote in his dissent. I am not prepared at this point to express a definite view on these questions, but I have serious doubts about the correctness of the court's views. So There it is, guys, once again from justthenews.com. And of course, I will keep you guys updated on this because it sounds like from a different story that I read that they will be revisiting this in some way. So there is that. All right, guys, moving on to the next one here, which comes straight out of the Daily Caller. Here are some of the wackiest things featured in Rand Paul's new report, the Festivus report, alleging $1,639,135,969,608 in government waste. So here we go. Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul released the latest edition of his annual Festivus report Tuesday, detailing over $1 trillion in alleged wasteful spending in the U.S. government throughout 2025. The newly released report found an estimated $1,639,135,969,608 in total government waste over the past year. Paul, a prominent fiscal hawk who serves as the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, said in a statement that no matter how much taxpayer money Washington burns through, politicians can't help but demand more. Fiscal responsibility may not be the most crowded road, but it's one I've walked year after year, and this holiday season will be no different, Paul continued. So before we get to the feats of strength, it's time for my airing of spending grievances. The 2025 Festivus report highlighted a spate of instances of wasteful spending from the federal government, including the Department of Health and Human Services spent $1.5 million on an innovative multi-level strategy to reduce drug use in Latinx communities through celebrity influencer campaigns, and also dished out $1.9 million on a hybrid mobile phone family intervention aiming to reduce childhood obesity among Latino families living in Los Angeles County. The report also mentions that HHS spent more than $40 million on influencers to promote getting vaccinated against COVID-19 for racial and ethnic minority groups. The State Department doled out $244,252 to Stand for Peace in Islamabad to produce a television cartoon series that teaches children in Pakistan how to combat climate change, and also spent $1.5 million to promote American films, television shows, and video games abroad, according to the report. The Department of Veterans Affairs spent more than $1,079,360 teaching teenage ferrets to binge drink alcohol this year, according to Paul's report. The report found that the National Science Foundation shelled out $497,200 on a video game challenge for kids. The NSF and other federal agencies also paid $14,643,280 to make monkeys play a video game in the style of The Price is Right, the report states. Paul's 2024 Festivus report similarly featured several instances of wasteful federal government spending, such as a Las Vegas pickleball complex and a cabaret show on ice. The Trump administration has been attempting to uproot wasteful government spending and reduce the federal workforce this year. The administration's cuts have shrunk the federal workforce to the smallest level in more than a decade, according to recent economic data. Festivus is a humorous holiday observed annually on December 23rd, dating back to a popular 1997 episode of the sitcom Seinfeld. Observance of the holiday notably includes an airing of grievances per the Seinfeld episode of its origin. So there it is, guys, once again from dailycaller.com, and of course, I will keep you guys updated on the unbelievable levels of government waste, fraud, and abuse. And hopefully at some point in time, we will be able to figure out how to reduce government spending, right? So there it is. And why is my Restream chat broken? That's kind of odd. Okay. No supported channels enabled. Yes, they are. Literally, they are. That's really weird. All right, I guess nobody's getting links out there other than Pilled today, at least for the rest of the show. All right, moving on to the next one here. Where do we leave off here? From the National Pulse, Minnesota mayors warn of looming financial crisis under Walz' leadership. So more on Walz today. Mayors across Minnesota are urging state leaders to address ongoing budget shortfalls that could result in significant tax increases for residents. A total of 98 mayors are warning that Governor Tim Walz's reckless fiscal policy has left local budgets strained, and that the state government has turned a $18 billion budget surplus into an estimated $3 billion deficit for the 2028 to 2029 biennium. Among the top concerns of the local leaders is the Walz administration's inability to handle a massive and sprawling social services fraud scheme involving Minnesota's Somali immigrant community. And it's not even inability as much as it is unwillingness, right? They don't want to piss off the Somalis. They'll lose their next elections, guaranteed. An estimated $9 billion in taxpayer dollars appears to have been stolen through schemes targeting food assistance programs and Medicaid. Fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities, reducing our capacity to plan responsibly, maintain infrastructure, hire and retain employees, and sustain core services without overburdening local taxpayers, the letter signed by the group of mayors states. There is a growing disconnect between state-level fiscal decisions and the strain they place on the cities we lead. When the state expands programs or shifts responsibilities without stable funding, it is our residents, families, seniors, businesses, and workers who ultimately bear the cost. Our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. We urge the legislature to course correct and to remember that every dollar you manage belongs not to the capital but to the people of Minnesota, the mayor's letter adds. The National Pulse reported on Monday that the House Oversight Committee has expanded its investigation into alleged fraud within Minnesota social services programs, issuing requests for interviews with current and former state officials and seeking cooperation from federal agencies. Chairman James Comer sent letters to 7 Minnesota officials asking them to participate in transcribed interviews scheduled for late January and early February 2026. The committee also contacted Attorney General Pam Bondi and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to request federal assistance with the inquiry. So there is that. Once again, guys, from thenationalpulse.com. Frankly, I think that Walz should end up in prison over this, along with a spate of other officials from the state of Minnesota. But I will let you guys know what ends up happening there. Next one here from Daily Wire. Federal judge blocks California law requiring teachers to hide children's gender identity. A U.S. District Court judge blocked California from forcing teachers to lie to parents about their children's secret gender transitions in a major ruling on Monday, which is absolutely freaking fantastic news. The case stemmed from a class action lawsuit brought by 2 Christian teachers who pushed back against the law requiring them to hide students' gender transitions from parents and use students' preferred pronouns. Monday's ruling from Judge Roger T. Benitez permanently ends California's dangerous and unconstitutional regime of gender secrecy policies in schools, according to the Thomas More Society, which filed the lawsuit. In a landmark class action ruling, Thomas More Society achieved a historic victory in Mirabelli et al. Versus Olson et al., ending California's gender secrecy policies and restoring transparency and parental involvement in public education, the Thomas More Society said. The decision and federal court order issuing a class-wide permanent injunction issued by U.S. District Court Judge Roger T. Benitez just days before Christmas secures justice not only for teachers Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lori West, who began the lawsuit, but for all parents and teachers harmed by these policies statewide. Benitez wrote that the case dealt with 4 questions about a parent's rights to information as against the public school's policy of secrecy when it comes to a student's gender identification. Those questions were, number 1, do parents have a right to gender information based on the 14th Amendment's substantive due process clause? Number 2, do parents have a right to gender information protected by the First Amendment's free exercise of religion clause? Number 3, do religious public school teachers have a right to provide gender information to parents based on the First Amendment's free exercise clause? And number 4, do public school teachers have a right to communicate accurate gender information to parents based on the First Amendment free speech clause? In each case, this court concludes that as a matter of law, the answer is yes, he wrote. Parents have a right to receive gender information and teachers have a right to provide to parents accurate information about a child's gender identity. California's public school system parental exclusion policies place a communication barrier between parents and teachers, he opined. Some parents who do not want such barriers may have the wherewithal to place their children in private schools or homeschool or to move to a different public school district. Families in middle or lower socioeconomic circumstances have no such options. For these parents, the new policy appears to undermine their own constitutional rights, while it conflicts with knowledgeable medical opinion. The state defendants are, in essence, asking this court to limit and restrict a common sense and legally sound description by the United States Supreme Court of parental rights that this court will not do. The parental exclusion policies create a trifecta of harm. They harm the child who needs parental guidance and possibly mental health intervention to determine if the incongruence is organic or whether it is the result of bullying, peer pressure, or a fleeting impulse. They harm the parents by depriving them of the long-recognized 14th Amendment right to care guide and make healthcare decisions for their children, and by substantially burdening many parents' First Amendment right to train their children in their sincerely held religious beliefs. And finally, they harm teachers who are compelled to violate these sincerely held beliefs and the parents' rights by forcing them to conceal information they feel is critical for the welfare of their students, he concluded. Fantastic ruling here by what sounds like a fantastic judge. Very happy about this. Of course, the woke idiots of California are going to be absolutely incensed over this, but that is A-okay. They can be mad all they want. So there it is, guys, once again from dailywire.com. Really awesome news there. Next one here from the National Pulse. Letitia James claims a legal win over the DHS. New York Attorney General Letitia James announced Tuesday that the state had prevailed in its case against the Department of Homeland Security over Federal Emergency Management Agency funding cuts. The announcement was made on X, formerly Twitter. We won our case against DHS, restoring funding for life-saving anti-terrorism and emergency response programs, James wrote, adding, "This is a major victory for our law enforcement and local leaders who depend on these funds to keep New Yorkers safe." James had previously stated that the funding in question was used to support national security and emergency response programs. She alleged that the cuts were made because New York refused to support what she described as federal government attacks on immigrants. Under James and New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, the state has resisted President Donald J. Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration, acting instead as a sanctuary state. The National Pulse reported earlier this month that the U.S. Department of Transportation moved to freeze tens of millions in federal highway funding for New York after an audit found that 53% of sampled commercial driver's licenses issued by the New York Department of Motor Vehicles were unlawfully granted to foreign nationals residing in the U.S. illegally. Earlier this year, a federal prosecution against James for mortgage fraud was thrown out in federal court after the federal attorney overseeing the case was disqualified. However, the Department of Justice is currently appealing the disqualification and seeking to reinstitute the criminal charges against James. So there is that once again, guys, from thenationalpulse.com. Some really disappointing stuff coming out of the judiciary today, guys. I gotta say, it's been quite the shit show when it comes to the judiciary branch of government. Not only today, but basically all freaking week. Next one here from Breitbart. U.S. economy grows 4.3%, the fastest in 2 years, and it's smashing expectations. The U.S. economy grew this summer at the fastest pace in 2 years, far outpacing economists' forecasts. The Commerce Department said U.S. gross domestic product, the government's official economic scorecard, rose at a seasonally and inflation-adjusted 4.3% annual rate in the third quarter. The report on the July through September period was delayed due to the shutdown. Today's blockbuster expectation-smashing GDP report is the latest proof that President Trump's America First trade and economic agenda continues to turn the page on the Biden economic disaster. American consumers are spending, and American exports are surging, White House spokesman Kush Desai said. President Trump built the greatest economy in the world in his first term, and he's in the process of doing it all over again. Americans can count on benefiting from a historic economic boom in 2026. Gross domestic product is a broad measure of the goods and services produced across the economy. Economists had expected the economy to grow at a 3.2% annual rate after the second quarter's 3.8% growth. Prior to the inflation adjustment, the economy grew at an 8.2% rate. Real final sales to private domestic purchasers, a slice of GDP that some economists view as a clearer measure of the health of the private sector, grew at a 3% annual rate, up from 3% in the second quarter. This suggests that demand from consumers and businesses remained strong and gathered a bit of steam over the summer. Consumer spending grew much faster than expected, expanding at a seasonally and inflation-adjusted annual rate of 3.5%. That's up from 2.5% in the second quarter and above the 2.7% expected. Donald Trump's trade policies appear to have added to growth in the third quarter as exports rose to 8.8%, while imports fell 4.7%. Exports add to GDP while imports, because they represent foreign production, are subtracted. Government spending added 0.39 points to growth. The main drag was private inventory investment, which subtracted 0.22 points as wholesalers and manufacturers drew down stocks. This is likely to reverse in future quarters, adding to growth in future quarters. Fixed investment grew only 1.0%, with residential investment declining 5.1%, reflecting the sluggish housing market. Corporate profits soared in the third quarter, rising at a 17.9% annual rate after adjusting for inventory pricing effects and depreciation. Due to the government shutdown, this initial estimate actually combines data typically used for both the advanced and second estimates, so it may be more reliable than usual initial readings. So there it is, guys, once again from Breitbart.com. And of course, I will keep you guys updated on the economy and what President Trump is doing to turn it around as we move forward. And I believe we are at that halfway mark, so I guess we'll go ahead and flip over to Pilled.net for the rest of the show. There are several links that you guys can use to follow us over, and I do recommend you guys do exactly that. Let me see if we have anybody on YouTube. I can't tell because the Restream is messed up over here. I don't know what's going on with Restream, guys, but it's really weird. It's telling me that my live chats aren't working. The show. We got one person over there, so I suppose I'll go ahead and share the link with you, whoever you are out there. Follow us over to Pilled.net. We'll be over there for the rest of the show. Looking forward to covering the rest of the news. We have another economically positive story to get through here, so looking forward to that. But we're going to play a quick video here for Pilled, and then we'll be back on the other end. I'll see you guys in less than 60 seconds. Here we go.
Pilled.net is proud to host The Breakdown, exclusively on the true home of free speech. To continue watching the show, we are here to help you over to Pilled. If you're new to the platform, just click on the welcome link. It will automatically walk you through signing up for your free account. If you already have a Pilled account, follow the link provided to take you directly to the Season Pixels stream. We are excited to have you join the Pilled family. And if you have any questions at all, just email support@Pilled.net. Enjoy the rest of the breakdown with Season Pixels, exclusively on Pilled.net. Free speech lives here.
Indeed, free speech lives over at Pilled.net. Follow us over, guys. We'll get into the rest of the news over there, and I'll see you guys on Pilled. All right, guys, let's go ahead.